terms of what's your time.
loving this phase of the season, Property. The competition's so high. We've got Mercedes up there now. They've joined McLaren and Red Bull. And at the moment, it seems like it's a three-way fight. We have a genuine three-way fight. Maybe Ferrari can bring themselves back into play as well.
I think box for a new helmet. This visor is completely... There's something's completely wrong with this visor. Okay, so can't see. Copy.
Has he got... Does he need a bit of a darker tint on there? Is the sun in his eyes? He wouldn't necessarily have had the darker tint on this morning in the grey, cloudy conditions. But with the sun out, is that getting in his eyes? I wonder.
Maybe he's changed helmet for the sunny conditions, and therefore he's using a visor he didn't use, or a helmet that he didn't use in the first session, and maybe he's picking up the fact that it's got tear-offs on there that have been put on badly, and sometimes you get a few air bubbles inside because you run multiple thin layers of plastic on the visor that you tear off through a practice session. It's very dusty out there, and we see drivers do that quite often. Sometimes you put your visor down and yeah, you can't see much through them at all. It's the only thing I can think is he's now in the midst of that helmet change. And you can see the tear-offs to the right-hand side of the helmet there. So yeah, off goes the old one, and he's going to swap over. Hopefully, for his sake, he's going to be able to see a bit better.
Well, Oscar Piastri couldn't see from the cockpit, but if you want to, you can see in whatever driver's car you want to be in. We've got all 20 of them for you, available along with the team radio. You need your Sky Sports ID. You need to log in using that. You need the Sky Sports app. You can use the QR code should you wish. And if you don't want to do that, you happen to be watching on Sky Q, Sky Stream or Sky Glass, or even now, you can just use the interactive button on your remote control. We'll make it nice and easy for you as Max Verstappen goes fastest ahead of his teammate Sergio Perez by about a second, and then Lewis Hamilton slots into second place. And can I just say, I absolutely adore this camera angle. I've been sat watching FP1, and it's almost like you're riding on a bike. It's like MotoGP as you turn around that banking. Absolutely phenomenal. More of that this weekend. Thank you very much. As Lando Norris goes second fastest.
It's a strange one, isn't it, Cameron? It's like it must have a gyro in there or something, and it's staying straight while the car tilts in the back. I can't quite work it out, but I'm glad you like it.
Don't need to. Just stand back and admire. For once in your life, don't try and explain it.
You know what feels weird? Is that in the car, you tilt your head, you lean your head towards the corner, into the corner. So it's completely, it goes against all of my instincts as I'm watching it, but yeah, each their own.
Taking him out of his comfort zone on this sunny Friday afternoon with just under 5 minutes gone. Lance Stroll goes fifth fastest, and every single car is out on the track at the moment. So I tell you what, let's go trackside, shall we? Turn 3, banked corner, and on the outside of it, Martin Brundle.
Absolutely right, that's where I am. This highly unusual corner in that, as we see the Williams of Alex Albon coming through here. We normally talk about the apex of a corner being on the inside. You kiss the inside of the corner with your front wheel when you're trying to minimise the angle and carry as much speed as you can. They don't get anywhere near the inside of the corner. Nobody does. The apex effectively is at the top of the corner on the outside. Some are braver than others as to how high they want to go. As the Alpine was pretty high there. The minimum speed is 70 miles an hour, just at the top of the hill. Russell goes through. And then there's a point where they hit the throttle just in front of me. Normally, the tail wags on the car, complains about the torque demand, the amount of throttle they're putting on, and they climb the hill. If you made a mistake coming out of the corner, you would have an enormous crash to the left-hand side on what's quite a small band. We've got a lock up here on the house. It makes the bank and hassles the throttle. My goodness, the drivers are going for it through here. Occasionally they try to get track position, as we just saw Sergio Perez, Aston Martin then Fernando Alonso. And you saw there the back end stepping up as he's desperately trying to get on the power. Supreme, so secure on the exit of the corner. So well balanced was the McLaren. Let's have a look at the RB. Really high line there. The Ferrari have the bump under heavy acceleration. He has
A little bit strange.
again heavy on the throttle. Car just trying to step out. Long stroll this time. And it's just action all the way through here. As I said, they will not go anywhere near the inside of this corner. It's really dished. It's really banked. Highly unusual. It's called Hugenholtz. Let's never call it turn 3. And it's really, you can really see Formula 1 cars and Formula 1 drivers. You're looking down on the cockpit. You can see their hand movements. You can see those that are calmer on the steering wheel, more confident in their car, in the placement of the car, how it's going to react when they hit the throttle as the hand streams through in front of us. And he had to take a breather on the throttle in the Haas because it was not handling as well as he wanted. So back to you, Crofty. I'm in a lovely spot here.
You're at Hugenholtz, that's what we're going to call it now, named after the legendary designer, of course, responsible for this track, and also for Suzuka. That is Sergio Perez, who's just gone off into the gravel in a runoff area. He's not the only driver, though, that's been off the track. Let's take a look at George Russell, down at turn 8 and into 9 just a few moments ago. This happened.
A little bit strange. Yeah, if I were looking.
It's a lock-up for George Russell, who was pushing on and pushing hard. And what caused that, I wonder?
It's the unloaded tyre, as is this one into turn 1 with Sergio Perez.
I'm struggling to stop the car into turn 1.
Yeah, copy that.
And we know that you've got a big tailwind into turn 1 here, so that I think explains, or goes some way to explain what happened with Perez. With Russell's one, I'm a bit more surprised. We saw it in the wet conditions. Hulkenberg went off there with it looked like a similar incident, but in the rain, other things are happening, obviously, with tyre temperatures, and I think it was an outlap with Hulkenberg, but yeah, it's very gusty out there, of course. It may have caught Russell out as well, but on that part of the track, I think you're more coming into a crosswind rather than a complete tailwind, which pushes the car on.
Lewis Hamilton through Hugenholtz, 14-degree banking on the inside, 19-degree banking on the outside. Is that why the drivers are taking that higher line?
I think it's what does push you to that high line, yeah. Like Martin was saying, a bit of a bizarre corner, and one that drivers aren't really familiar with. Maybe some of the older drivers from back in the day in F1 would be more familiar when they had cars with no downforce, or certainly less downforce. They needed the help of the circuits to give them more grip, and that's why we see generally less banking on the tracks today compared to those days. And yeah, it definitely plays with the lines. Here's another one as well, turn 12. That's another 6-degree banking. And so apparently the FIA, the rules stipulate in circuit design that anything up to 6 degrees you don't need special allowance for. So anything over 6 degrees you have to kind of use a lot more mathematics to convince them that it's going to be okay, going to be safe enough, because of the stresses it puts through the car, and the tyres.
Yeah, first year here we didn't have the DRS through that banking at the final turn, did we? It came later down that straight.
Because some of the teams' calculations said that they weren't going to be able to use DRS, and other teams said, yeah, it'll be absolutely fine.
And they have been absolutely fine. Verstappen from Hamilton by 0.2 of a second, Russell half a second adrift, and Lando Norris on a bit of a flyer currently, going fastest through the first sector. But let's head down to, let's head to the team radio first. We've already seen Max Verstappen locking up like his teammate into turn 1, but now problems to the rear of the car. Let's have a look at this, Al.
Oh, and that's on the exit of Skyflock, isn't it? Turn 7, just losing the rear end here, right on board with him. So you look to tuck it into the inside, a little bit wide, and it's very dusty, as we know, on this circuit. And they're clearing up, obviously, the inside line. They're making that clean line. I saw a car offline before, kicking up loads of sand. It's a common feature of this circuit, and I think that's what might have just happened with Max there. He didn't feel confident with the rear of the car anyway. Then that sent him a bit wide, and then his problems just became exaggerated after that.
Lando Norris finishes up 0.3 of a second away from Max Verstappen. Down to the pits, then Bernie Collins, good afternoon.
Well, just perfect timing from you, as always, Crofty, but Sargent's coming back in the pit lane. I wanted to speak about Williams. They've brought a significant number of updates to the car this week. It starts really from the mid of the car back, but there's a new floor body, a new diffuser at the back, side pod inlet, a Coke engine cover, and the central air intake. So where you can see the fluorescent yellow fan now below the camera in that intake, that's new as well. So significant upgrades to that Williams to try and improve the overall performance. We've seen a little bit of that in P1 from Albon. Is there more to come in P2? So one maybe to watch a little bit further down the grid.
We've just been riding on board with Charles Leclerc. Guess what? Locked up going into turn 1. That's 3 cars that we've seen do that. I'm going to suggest it might all be wind affected.
Yeah, it's obviously very tricky today. We saw it earlier on as well in FP1, even though they're approaching that corner much slower. We're going to take another look at this one, but this time from the off-board. So yeah, the inside front, it's just the unloaded wheel. And yeah, he did well there to stay on the track.
Shame, because his preparation lap, he was actually looking quite good, Charles Leclerc there, and then, well, ruined going into Tarzan, the first corner, named after the old groundskeeper around here. It was his nickname, I think. He had a hut on the outside of the turn. So I seem to remember from the dark recesses of my mind. Lando Norris hits Alex Albon, has just gone 4th fastest on the hard compound tyre. Yuki Tsunoda also up there on the hard compound tyre, which actually, I know it's the hard tyre, but it should be of the favoured tyre for the weekend. The C3, of all the compounds, is the one the teams really love, because I'm assuming it's the one that gets used more often than anything else.
Yeah, it's we don't know at this stage what tyre is going to be the best one, and the teams themselves don't even know. So we see, therefore, some disparity between different choices. The mediums, the hards. Nobody's ran the soft tyre yet. That's going to be your qualifying tyre. But different teams will have a different opinion and a different feel as well on what tyre works best for their car. And that's why I love these changeable conditions. So we've had the wet, the changeable conditions of FP1, and now we've got a track that's going to be evolving the whole way through this session, starting from a very green track, lots of dust there, the sand I mentioned before, the rubber therefore starts to build and get laid down on the circuit. As this session continues, the balance changes, the grip changes on the car, you're forever chasing your tail.
Yeah.
And then tomorrow, who knows, maybe we have more rain, and so you're trying to decipher which tyre is going to work best for the race day today in this session.
On a normal track, Bernie, once it starts to rubber in, you're absolutely fine, but because of the wind and the sand around here, you're almost starting back at square one every time you come into work on a Friday, Saturday or Sunday. Is Bernie Collins there? Colin Collins.
I'm here, Crofty, I'm here.
Excellent.
So I was just going to say that, yes, through the sessions here, particularly the morning sessions, the P1 and P3, we see the track clean up a lot. And you see it sometimes when the safety car goes around, actually, very early in the day. You see a lot of dust being taken out, particularly in the curves. So it tends to rest in the little divots that we see there. I wanted to just come in a little bit into tyre allocation that you're talking about there, Crofty. Even though we had that session this morning, we had the 2 tyres. We normally run 2 tyres in P1. That doesn't change what happens for P2. The teams still only have 2 dry tyre sets for this P2 session. So it's the medium and the hard, as Anne said now, and then the soft later on. And we've only got 4 drivers out there on hard at the moment, so that is looking preferred for the rest of the weekend, particularly from a race run inside.
Briefly, Bernie, I'm not sure what the strategy was to win last year. I think it was a 5-stop strategy given all the rain that we had. But it's a 2-stop race, in effect, this one. Is that what the teams will be expecting?
Yes, it can be a 2-stop race, and it's going to be very, very dependent on track temperature, actually. And given the forecast changed so much, and even today we've had big changes through the day, teams might want to keep that hard in their pocket just in case.
Thanks, Bernie. George Russell goes 2nd fastest, 10th behind Max Verstappen. Lewis Hamilton crosses the line, goes quickest by 0.3 of a second over Verstappen and George Russell. Lewis Hamilton, along with Oscar Piastri, the joint top scorer in the last 4 races. 2 wins in that time, 80 points scored, comes to this race in a rich vein of form, and he's fastest at the moment. But there's a long way to go in this session. We haven't seen the appearance of the soft tyres yet. It's mediums that are in front with Lewis Hamilton, Max Verstappen and George Russell. And Hamilton trying to win here at Zandvoort in Formula 1 for what would be a 32nd different track that he's won a race at in his Formula 1 career. Now, as the Ferrari came in,
Hope that wasn't so much thought I just ran over there.
No, George, it was a code. You're fine. But you can understand why George will be asking, and that, I'm afraid, is Nico Hülkenberg against the barriers, and that is a red flag. Down at turn 1, and Hülkenberg's gone deep in the Haas. You mentioned it, and we saw him go off the track early on in the rain, cold tyres, brakes were grabbing, and he's facing the wrong way. At the moment, I think you can see the marks on the track where he's had the brakes, he's spun round and into the barrier, and we hope that Nico Hülkenberg is okay. That is him obviously out of this second practice session. He looks to be physically fine, but that's his session over.
Yeah, the gravel trap's done its work to slow the car down before it's hit sideways into the barrier, and you've got a huge amount of tyre barriers there as well. All part of the safety calculations that the FIA and circuit design team would have put in place. You can see on the left-hand side actually the runoff of tarmac area, where if you're carrying a lock up, or if you can make some quick thinking decisions inside the car, that's obviously the preferred way to go. But Nico's been wrestling with the car, I should imagine, on the way into the corner, similar to how we saw Perez deal with things, and also Leclerc. So here we go, riding on board. I should imagine he's going to try and turn in deep into the corner. Oh no, it's just the rear that's gone on him. That's a big surprise. So, well, for me, it looked like he was just a bit of a passenger there. So not driver error, and I can't believe that was wind-induced either. That was a severe snap round, unless he's dipped to left rear on the grass as he's turned in. That just went around way too quick for any driver to react to.
He's won here in Formula BMW ADAC, his first season in racing, A1 GP, Euro F3 as well. And he's found himself into the barriers there, and I'm with you, Alan. Little or nothing Nico Hülkenberg could do to get out of that.
Just trying to see, does he dip a wheel on the grass? I'm just trying to see the edge of the track here. I don't think he's anywhere close to now. He's nowhere close.
Don't know what happened there.
Yeah, I don't know either, Nico. Yeah, we're having a look.
Just the rear completely locked up.
Yep.
Braking.
Is that a brake-by-wire issue?
I should imagine so. I should imagine, unless it's something mechanical in the braking system. Either way, you can completely discard driver error being anything to do with that incident.
The brake-by-wire system, basically, because the rear brakes are quite skinny, it uses engine braking with the rears, and it's meant to equalise things out. And if it goes wrong and gives you too much braking force at the rear, you can often see cars stepping out in the way that Hülkenberg's Haas did just then. His only consolation is it's not very far to walk back to the pits. But that is little or no consolation for Nico Hülkenberg, who was looking to get a decent session in after finishing 8th in FP1, and he is out now after 20 minutes. Red flag at Zandvoort because of this incident. Nico Hülkenberg, rear, locking up, spinning his Haas rounds into the gravel, into the sand, into the barriers. He has walked away from that and walked back to the pit lane. But that is not what he nor Haas would have wanted. After 20 minutes, he's out of what is a very valuable session because of the rain that we had here this morning. And nothing he could do about that.
The more I watch it, the more I can discard anything that Nico would have been a part of in that incident. It was the car that spat him off into the barrier, and he does. I think he's scratching his head with this one. We can hear from the team radio now.
Yeah, I don't know either, Nico. Yeah, we're having a look.
Just the rear completely locked up.
Yep.
Braking.
It's a shame to put the car, for the car to be in the barrier, and as you say, Crofty, miss out on such a valuable session, because we might not have another dry session, who knows, before race day, perhaps, the way the weather's been so far this weekend. And yeah, Nico walks back to his pit box, but I think that's a bitter blow for the team, because I feel like they've been plagued with braking issues all the way through this season so far, and even before that as well, and it's now come to a head where you're missing out on valuable track time because of it.
And it must be the worst feeling for a driver where you're sailing down the main straight, everything is absolutely fine, you've turned in, you've dabbed the brakes, and then, oh no, where am I going now? There's nothing you can do.
No, it is a horrible feeling because you just feel like a passenger. I mean, essentially it feels like something's broken on the car. You're doing the same things, and it's your job as a driver to be as systematic as possible, as repeatable as possible, and that's what can give the team the best data in terms of what they change on the car going forward for the weekend and what you do with the car balance. And it's no good if you're forever trying to chase the car and react to things that shouldn't be happening. So, and that's an extreme case, of course, with it sending him off into the barrier like that.
Kevin Magnussen's getting ready to go out, so they're obviously they're convinced that it's not an issue that's going to affect both cars. Just looking here to see the tyres on Verstappen's Red Bull, I'm not surprised that he's got the red striped soft tyres on. Now seems like a very good time to get out there and do some qualifying runs, just in case something like that happens again in the next 10 minutes and you lose even more time.
Well, we said at the start, it's old school track. It's going to bite you if you or the car has an error, and you can easily end up in the barrier like that and cause a red flag and cost everybody else time as well. So yeah, maybe Red Bull doing the right thing here, even though the circuit's not in optimal condition. That will come later on in this session, but you can't afford to risk losing any more track time. So get the soft tyres on. Might be the only dry session you have, and free time to go out and get an idea of what happens to them.
So hopefully we'll see this lap from Max Verstappen at McLaren. They're still putting the Flovis paint on. They've still got some aero work to do, but this is Grand Prix start number 200 this weekend for Max Verstappen. At the track, he's taken pole and the winner in the last 3 years. So take us through the lap, Matt.
Yeah, so here we go down the main straight into Tarzan corner with the tailwind behind you. Max navigates it well. On power as early as you can. So slightly uphill through the left and into the right. Turn 2, then you're into turn 3, Hugenholz, up round the outside of that corner and get on power again nice and early and use a lot of that orange and white curb. Then you fly down this hill, then up the hill through turn 6 before Skyflock turn 7. It's the fastest first sector, inevitably, for Verstappen. The car still looks like it's moving around there at such high speed. Throw the car into turn 8, let it run wide, let it breathe before you ease the car in on the brakes to turn 8, and then get on power while still turning. Hold the gear, don't change up before turn 10, then down 2 for turn 10 itself. Again, opening the DRS, the second zone here on this track, and straight line the braking into the right-left chicane over the camera. Looked like he could have used a bit more curve, maybe. It's hard to tell from that angle, but through the right-left, that bank corner in turn 12, and again through turn 13, DRS open, flat out through the final corner, hug the inside, try and minimize the line, and back on to the main straight. At quite a short circuit, a 1 minute 10.986 for Verstappen, but Norris is right behind him.
As Bottas goes third fastest, such is the improvement once you get the soft tyres on. Norris crosses the line, goes quicker by 0.02 of a second, 25 milliseconds. If you so wish.
Do you reckon that would be that track improvement we're talking about? I'm sure that's what Max will be saying.
Well, we didn't see Lando's lap and all of it. I just got the impression when Max, there wasn't the glide, that the car wasn't necessarily on rails in the way that we've seen in the past with the Red Bull.
It wasn't, and I don't expect that from anybody yet with the way the circuit is, especially with the gusty wind that we have, up to, what, 30-mile-an-hour winds today. So it is going to be a challenge for all of them. Albon's looked pretty handy so far in the Williams. I think it's a track that he clearly enjoys, and he likes hustling a car around. Let's see what he can do in the Williams as he comes up to the line.
Qualified 4th last year.
Nice.
Put his car 4th fastest this year as well. The interesting thing there, 0.05 of a second separating Sergio Perez in the championship leading car and Alex Albon in a car that currently is enough for only 9th fastest in the championship.
Well, yeah, Perez 0.6 away from his teammate. Yeah. You'd usually, as a driver, you usually allow yourself 3 to 4 tenths before you start getting seriously upset with yourself. That's what I always found. But yeah, 0.6, it starts to become a bit more of a problem, and you've got to start digging a bit deeper.
Bad news for Carlos Sainz. He is out for the rest of this session. gearbox issue. Session is over for Carlos Sainz, is picking up a bit of a toe behind Valtteri Bottas. Oscar Piastri by 2/10 goes quickest overall. See, that's what happens when you've got a fully functioning rib and it's not broken.
I don't know, honestly, I don't know how he's been doing what he's been doing, and I'm not sure even after what, the 2 or 3 week break that we've had, that it's going to be enough to heal the break that he had. From experience of driving with a broken rib or ribs, it's excruciating, and they take an eternity to get better, at least 6 weeks. But these young kids, Crofty, they're superhuman. So I'm sure he's had superhuman help as well to help him recover. But
I bashed my rib in a swimming pool for the course of the summer break. I was on holiday with the kids, and it's still sore now, 3 weeks on. And I'm not sat in a Formula One car, and I don't think I ever will, sadly, sit in a Formula One car again. But apparently it was because of an ill-fitting seat. And it was just pinching a little bit, and that's how he got the broken rib.
Just goes to show the G-force that these drivers are experiencing here. Anything up to 5 times their own body weight being pushed onto the side of the seat in corners like this one here at turn 8.
5 times my body weight being pushed into a seat. I'll break more than a rib. I tell you.
Sorry for the seat.
Yeah, tell me about it. Bernie Collins, down to you. Gearbox problems at Ferrari.
I don't know how to pick up on that, Crofty, but yes, just in front
from us both, yes.
just in front of Carlos Sainz here in car and Ferrari, and not happy smiley down here at the moment, trying to get this car taken apart, like you said, get into the back and figure out what's wrong with that gearbox. Likely just get straight into the gearbox change. So starting their Friday night job list early, but with such limited dry running, it's going to be very difficult to get the car set up and into the position they want. Still benefiting, of course, from Charles Leclerc still running and picking up valuable data for the team, but halving the data that you get on a Friday is not a great way to go into the rest of the weekend. And he hasn't had a run on a soft tyre. If you remember from P1, the 2 Ferraris ran a medium tyre for their last run, so he won't have had a feel on that soft going into Saturday.
Not what Carlos Sainz would have wanted. George Russell goes a little bit wide there, but he shouldn't have lost too much time. Ricciardo goes 8th fastest, Magnussen 6th fastest, Alonso 5th, Tsunoda 4th, and now George Russell quickest overall by 6 100ths of a second, and his teammate Lewis Hamilton through the first 2 sectors is right on the pace too. This is what we want to see, quite frankly. And albeit Norris and Verstappen separated up by only 25 milliseconds, they're now finding themselves a couple of tenths off the pace, and that pace is being headed by George Russell with a 10th of a second between himself and Lewis Hamilton, and Oscar Piastri right in the middle.
Top 5 separated by just over 2/10 of a second is so impressive, and this is what we've come to expect now at this stage of the season. As we look at Carlos Sainz there in the Ferrari garage, wishing that he could be out there along with everyone on his side of the garage. Such desperate scenes there at Ferrari, because he knows how valuable this session is, as you watch your competitors just chalking up that all the laps and getting more of a feel for this track, more of a feel for these soft tyres and where you want to take the car in terms of the balance, the setup for later on tonight when the teams work at it back at base, obviously running the simulation overnight as they always do on the driver sims, and you're not a part of that.
Yeah, absolutely correct. Daniel Ricciardo about to go out for a lap. There's a surprise. We cut from Daniel Ricciardo to a shot of Liam Lawson, who of course was the man that replaced Daniel Ricciardo here and drove superbly well in last year's race. But he's the guy battling Daniel Ricciardo for a seat in that Red Bull stable next year. Helmut Marko says Lawson will be in one of our cars. So my question is, who's Daniel Ricciardo trying to beat at the moment to say to Red Bull, I'm your man for next year? His teammate Yuki Tsunoda or Sergio Perez? Let's just listen to this first.
Check the gearbox. Do something with the gearbox. Copy. Stayed in 7th gear.
Yeah, so he's obviously felt something. It could have been in the hydraulics or the gearbox itself, that he felt a bit of a dodgy shift.
Yeah.
And
if it was hydraulics, though, would they have said he's out of the session this early? or would
Yeah.
they be confident that they might be able to fix it?
It might take, with such complex cars, Cropsey, it could take, and obviously they need to check it for a bit of damage as well if there were any hydraulic issues that can lead to some bad shifts. He obviously felt the bad shift, not the fact he's losing hydraulic fluid. So there's something that's gone on there, and he's maybe taken the initiative not to change gear himself. He said, I'm staying in 7th gear, or it's staying in 7th gear. I couldn't quite get enough information from that message, but we're all trained as drivers to not shift gear if we feel anything different happening, and if we're told hydraulic issue, you immediately come in without shifting the gears because it can lead to further damage.
Right. The question then, Daniel Ricciardo, who's his battle against? Sergio Perez or Yuki Tsunoda? Because Yuki Tsunoda might beat him, but Red Bull don't think he's the one for the Red Bull car next year. But if Daniel Ricciardo beats Sergio Perez, then here's his argument to say, you should put me in that Red Bull for next year because I'm beating the one that you've given a second chance to this year.
Well, it's easy for Ricciardo. All he can control is what's in his ability to control. He can't control what happens to Perez. So I'm sure he's wishing that Perez continues to struggle, and the team may think about replacing him, but that doesn't change the job that Ricciardo has to do. He has to beat his teammate. He has to, he has to destroy Tsunoda.
Yeah.
He's got to, every single session, every single race qualifying, he's got to raise an eyebrow or two down at Red Bull to make them think he's our guy if Perez doesn't perform or continues not to perform.
You saw a shot there of Oliver Oakes, who is the new team principal, of course, at Alpine. Started today, his first day at the track today. So he comes in and has announced his first major decision. And I'm assuming he was involved in that decision, that Jack Doohan will be racing for the team for next year. Well done, Jack. We are absolutely chuffed to bits. Very nice guy, very capable driver, and it keeps up the record of junior drivers coming into the Sky commentary box with us and getting a race drive for the next season.
Yeah, it's great news for Jack Doohan. I think it's great news for us as well, and all the fans that support him.
Yeah. And, it was us what did it, basically.
Is that what, yeah, I mean, obviously, yeah, we don't want to beat our own drum too much, but yeah, it was all to do with us.
I did see the reserve drivers, very funny podcast that I'm sure a lot of you have heard, put up the headline, Alpine finally signed reserve driver from Australia to race seat, which I thought was, it just tickled me. It really did, to be honest. So, Verstappen's on the mediums, and it's on to race pace here. Qualifying massively important here because it is not necessarily a track you can overtake at that easily in the dry, but you need to have a good race pace as well, because if there's an offset, delta, and degradation in the tyres, you're going to be a sitting duck at the end of that main straight. Bernie, down to you.
Yeah, so just quickly, Crofty, to come in on Oscar Piastri in the garage after that soft run. We're just seeing pictures now. Hopefully you're seeing them starting to clear off the flow vids that they had on the front right wishbone sort of assembly. And that's a carryover test from this morning. We know McLaren, with a very upgraded car, particularly in that front area, taking lots of images, checking that they're happy with the flow of air around those components and over it. And now a bit of a clear-up job for the guys in the garage here. We also seen earlier, in between, just before the soft run, on Norris's side of the car, they're doing substantial changes to the suspension setup, just trying to get that new car in the right zone for that soft run, which definitely looks like they have from the timesheet, but now more to learn in the long runs like this.
Thanks ever so much, Bernie. So 408 points for Red Bull, 366 for McLaren. McLaren technically, mathematically, could overtake Red Bull in the Constructors' Championship this weekend. Significant that, as Red Bull have been leading it since Spain 2022.
Wow, yeah, it just goes to show the rate of progress that McLaren have made. I mean, they were the first team, really, weren't they, to step it up and bring upgrades that really made a difference, as we run on board with George Russell through the second to last corner.
Just check the floor after exit curb, turn 13. A firm.
Yeah, I think you spotted it at the time, didn't you, Crofty? And you could see the sparks fly, the resin plank that they use as well, the dust flying from that. And so George, it's good that he would race that straight away. You're not always aware when you're inside the car that the cameras are watching you. The team can see the data, but it's good for you to be honest, own up to it straight away and guide them where to look. And you can help speed up the process that way as Lando Norris now comes down towards the chicane, also on the medium tyre on his race run as well.
And while he does that, question for Bernie Collins down in the pit lane. Bernie, we saw Norris and Verstappen going out to set their qualifying times. Then it was what, 7-8 minutes later, I think off the top of my head, that we saw Russell, Piastri, Hamilton do their laps. Is track evolution here that significant that has a bearing on the Russell, Piastri, Hamilton laps, or is it just extra pace from them? Would you say that margin of a tenth between Norris and Hamilton, as Norris goes quite wide in Hugenholtz, would you say that margin is down to track evolution or pace, or what?
It'll be a combination. The evolution is very high here. You have to remember, we've not had that P1 session. We don't have a lot of other series running actually either. So all of that adds up, and you know exactly what you're saying. It seems like a few minutes when you think about it. How could that make that much difference? But that's why we see everyone running right at the end of a qualifying session, because every minute the track will be improving a little bit, and there's such fine margins across these teams now that literally every second counts.
And on a day like today, with the wind gusting at times at around about 20-25 miles an hour, does more sand then blow onto the track and stop some of that evolution, or does the rubber that's being laid down offset the sand that's being blown off?
I think generally the evolution will take charge. So generally the track will evolve, even though it is still very windy. And we've got pretty good models to predict what we think the track evolution will be, based on historical numbers, for example, or based on what we've seen on other years. But what we struggle to predict is that gusty wind that you pick up on. Sometimes you can get a really lucky lap where the wind is all playing in its favour and you've not got the big gust through a corner that's maybe had you over the lap before, and that is much harder to predict and much harder to give the driver information on.
Bernie, thanks ever so much indeed. Just under 22 minutes to go of this session. Race run time now. We've got George Russell, Oscar Piastri, Lewis Hamilton separated by a tenth. Norris and Verstappen completing the top 5, just under 3/10 between those drivers. And interestingly, Oscar Piastri comes out on the soft compound tyre. His teammate Lando Norris out there on the medium. So McLaren getting both their drivers on different compounds to do a little comparison.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, we were talking about this in FP1. If both of the drivers have a similar style, require similar things from the car as well in terms of the balance and where they find the grip, then the beauty is, for a team, you can start to use both of those cars wisely for creating a different setup, perhaps on each car, seeing which one works better. In this case, using different tyre compounds, seeing which one works better. And if the two drivers are close in lap times and driving style and requirements from the car, then it can really speed up that process and get you to the right answer faster. So I think that's what we're looking at here in McLaren. They're using one driver on one set of tyres, the mediums with Lando, and then they've given Oscar the set of tyres that perhaps you might decide to start the race on. After using them in qualifying, the soft tyres, they could be your starting tyre for the race, and therefore you need to know what they're likely to do, how long you can push them for in the race.
It also gives you the most available opportunity to get the run in that you want to get in on a track where, as we've already seen, if you go off, it's liable to lead to an excursion into the barriers and a potential red flag as well.
Exactly. So it's just going to fast track any learning that you have, and particularly in a session where, like you say, if you have another red flag, which is highly likely around this track, that you've done the majority of the work than just sending both of your drivers out selfishly focusing on just their own program. It's better for the greater good of the team to split your strategies there.
I feel really sorry for the guys that are trying to keep the bin liners in place so they can put some flow-vis paint on, because in these breezy conditions you could basically be holding that, start to apply the paint, a sudden errant gust of wind will take it away, and that's it. No hope of keeping anything clean that you don't want.
I think the Flavia's paint will be doing its own thing before the car even gets out on track. That's probably more of their problem. Some very strange patterns occurring in this place. Yeah, the car hasn't actually left the garage yet.
Yeah. Oh dear, oh dear. So, under 19 minutes to go, Lewis Hamilton then on track. He's led 30 laps so far this year. 15 at Spa, 15 at Silverstone. What does this weekend bring for Lewis Hamilton, I wonder? And a car that look pretty hooked up so far.
Look at this shot, though. This visor cam is brilliant on this track. Like I said before, at the start of free practice too, it's just so undulating. You see where the driver's looking, the small corrections on the steering. This really brings it to life. It doesn't, the roll hoop camera doesn't do the work justice from the driver inside the cockpit. That shot does. You see what a fight it is. See how he's leaning his head into the corner and he goes over a curve and the steering fights him in a bad way. And it's like that every single lap of the race. They're not in there on a Sunday drive just poopling around, enjoying stuff. It's not like a road car.
Correct.
It's a constant battle.
Hamilton's lap was a 1:16.4. Verstappen just put in a 1:15.7. Last lap from Lando Norris was a 1:15.3. Oscar Piastri on the soft tyre, 1:16.0. Hamilton on the medium tyre, just to give you a few samples of laps out there. 1:15.2 for George Russell and a 1:15.5 last lap now for Oscar Piastri. And there's the points scored in the last 5 race weekends. Gave you the last 4, Hamilton and Piastri together, and it's consistency that wins you things in this sport. Mercedes are finding it, and McLaren have had it for a little bit longer. Right, let's go trackside. Martin Brundle, where have you got to now?
I'm on the inside of turn 7. Now, this might be the second shortest circuit on the Formula 1 calendar after Monaco, but they still carry a lot of speed there. Minimum speed, 140 miles an hour, 220 clicks. Now, McLaren goes through. Now, a quarter of Holland is below sea level, and that's how I feel here. And we saw the banking as well, didn't we, at turn 3. And a corner like this is really sheltered. It's not going to be affected by gusts of wind. You feel very protected from it. It's down here. The fans won't be up on the top of the hill there. They'll be getting the full force of it. But Formula 1 drivers, I think, can commit to this corner with some confidence that they're not going to get blown off the track. Now, 2 in 3 of the races here have had safety cars since we started coming back here. And one of the reasons is there are no service roads, either inside or outside. You can see the big gravel track there on the top of the hill. You can see this massive crane behind me because there's no service road on the inside either to pull the cars back into. The only way to recover an incident here is to crane it out of the way, which is why safety cars are more prevalent. It gives me goosebumps a little bit being down here, because when I raced here in the 80s, we used to head off into the dunes out there, which is now a holiday park. And really high-speed corners, up in a wonderful feeling, but everything was protected back then by catch fencing, which were poles and like chicken wire netting, if you like, that was pretty terrifying, especially if you got a pole coming in the side of the cockpit, or you got wrapped up in the wire and the car caught fire or something. And it was pretty spooky out here, I must be honest. But so we've got much better solutions now, but you can see the way the cars are threading. And just as they go past us, it's like some of those, the videos you see of fighter jets going at Mach 1 or something. There's like a thump as the aerodynamics come past the car, pushing a great big hole in the air, really using the air to generate downforce, to generate engine power. And it's a thud, thud, thud every time they come through. You can smell them because they're really hitting the ground. The Mercedes is hitting the ground harder here than anything else. But you can see the yellow marks, the telltale signs from the plank, as we call it, underneath the car there. And this is a very long corner. And this and corners like turn 3 I showed you earlier are the reason why minimum tyre pressures here are 27.5 front PSI, 24 rear hot minimum. Now that might not sound a lot for your car, your motorbike, or even your cycle actually, but for a single-seater racing car, they're high pressures to keep the integrity of the tyre for loads like the banking, for loads like long corners, because they run as much downforce as they can get away with it. Such a short circuit, so many corners, not really a straight particularly worth its name. And that again is why I think I'm feeling this impact of the high-speed aerodynamic pulse as they come past, because they are carrying a lot of downforce. So yeah, it's fast for a short technical circuit, isn't it? And once again, plenty of energy, plenty of commitment going on down here. Back to you.
Fantastic, Martin, thank you very much indeed. George Russell, 2 seconds.
Has the wind picked up? No, we don't see anything on the wind.
It's gusting, that's the trouble.
It's still strong, but it hasn't got any stronger, I think.
But sometimes it'll drop off and then gust back up again, but it's not the intensity of those gusts. Haven't got any stronger. There's an incident involving Lance Stroll and Alex Albon. Stroll had to jam his brakes on in the pit lane as Alex Albon was released pretty much into his path. Also, Daniel Ricciardo might just have been released into the path of Joe Guan Yu as well. Both been noted by race control. We'll keep you up to date with that. George Russell said in Spa, I was a bit too light. Couldn't do much about that other than have a really big meal before the race. Wasn't a good idea. Tyres were a bit lighter than we expected. Plank was worn more than we expected as well, and that all contributed to the fact that he became the second driver in the last 30 years to be disqualified after winning a Grand Prix. In fact, for the first time in Formula One history, the Belgian Grand Prix this year was the first race where the pole sitter didn't. I was going to say that. Let's just see this again from Ricciardo and Joe. Oh, yeah, that's pretty much how it was for Albon and for Stroll.
Yeah, I think this one actually looked even more aggressive, didn't it? A bit closer for these two than it was for Albon. It was more of an aggressive cut into the to the fast lane, you should say. So yeah, in both instances, it's the driver and the team that's let the car go in an unsafe manner. I think that may get into trouble.
It'll be a fine, I think. Stewards are investigating that. Yeah, Spa, first race in F1 history where the pole sitter wasn't the fastest in qualifying and the winner wasn't the first to cross the line. It's never happened before in F1. But my point I was going to ask is, Martin saying no car is going thud, 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 and hitting the ground more with the plank than the Mercedes. Do they need to be a bit more mindful this weekend, bearing in mind what happened in Spa, that something like that doesn't happen here again if they're wearing the plank out by running a little bit closer to the ground than others?
Well, the planks are measured, as we know as well, and I think Mercedes have fallen foul of that one along with Ferrari. Was it last year in Austin? They don't measure everyone's car when it comes to the plank wear, so it's one of those things in this modern ground effect era that we have in Formula One, that the closer you can run the car to the ground, obviously there's more performance there. That's what they're all chasing. But the thing to remember with the Mercedes situation in Spa is that both cars at Hamilton's and Russell's left the weigh scales before the race at only half a kilo difference to each other. So it's not like they entered the car knowing it was going to be underweight. George knew himself that he was a little bit underweight or close to being underweight. So maybe there are things in that process with the driver physio that can help the team. I don't know what the process is there at Mercedes, but things like that might be able to be tightened up in the future.
Let's head to the pit wall. Not to Mercedes. We used to hear from him at the Mercedes pit wall, but he's at Williams now. Team boss James Vowles, manfully struggling to keep his hair in place in the wind here. We all need a haircut this time of the year, James. Don't worry about that. Great to have you with us. How's this session going? Because it looks really tricky for the drivers out there.
Yeah, you summarised it well. I think the gusts are still up at towards 70, 80 kilometres an hour. And then the main wind is about sort of 30, 40. And what happens is you're driving and with a gust all of a sudden the car moves. And you can't really tell if it's tire movement or wind effectively. So tough out there, but otherwise okay. I mean, I think there was more in it on a single lap. It was a one-lap tyre, and we sort of produced a better second lap, so we had a little bit more to find there. On the long runs, it's all looking fairly sensible.
James Zant here. The car looks sensible as well in the short runs with lower fuel as well on the soft tyre. It seems pretty competitive here once again.
It is. I guess what I'm adjudicating it by is we still got Sonoda and Magnussen ahead, so I need to go through the fine details of what was power mode, what was fuel. What I can say is we have a lot of power to count, and there's a good amount of fuel in the car, so I think it looks reasonable. Always tricky.
With these conditions and it being so windy, how on earth can you evaluate how well your upgrades are working, bearing in mind each lap is in very differing conditions?
I mean, the first and foremost is there's also a track-specific element, but Formula 1's changed a lot. In the old days, we'd actually go to somewhere like Elvington or otherwise do straight-line running to evaluate how an aeroplane is. And you can't do that anymore. It doesn't make sense to do that anymore. And also, it doesn't really matter what it's doing in a straight line. It's what it's doing in the corners. So as a result of that, teams have sort of evolved away from push rod and pull rod loads. They still use that, but to actually having pressure tapping, it's about a couple of hundred of them really across the car, the floor, in the front wing and the rear wing, which tells you how much load the car's experiencing through corners. So we do that, but in truth, at a windy track like that, these conditions, it's very hard to read that. So you'll need multiple races before you get a read. What I trust more is the process we're doing at the factory in the wind tunnel, which means that I trust that we're at a performance than that.
James, thanks ever so much. Great to have your insight. We'll have a chat tomorrow as well. Let you get back to the last 7 3/4 minutes of this practice session. Logan Sargent, 15th fastest. Alex Albon, 10th fastest, by the way, for Williams.
Just show the rate of progress that James was talking about in Formula 1. So Russell heads the times with the 1 minute 10.7. That probably won't be bettered now that we're looking at the long run pace. They won't be seeing the soft tyres again. But last year, just for comparison, in FP2, the best time from Norris was a 1 minute 11.38. So a rapid amount, and that's not Mercedes pace. That was, from the McLaren that was already fast that time of the year. Lewis Hamilton was the best in Mercedes back then, ended that session in P4, 3/10 further back from Norris. Wow. So that's a huge amount of progress from last year to this year from Mercedes alone.
And talking of which, I saw some numbers yesterday that suggested, we were wondering, have Red Bull, Helmut Marko's been quite critical of their rate of development. Have they gone a bit backwards since the first 4 races of the season? The answer is no. They've actually carried on with their development and have been getting better. It's just McLaren and Mercedes, by contrast, have developed at a faster rate this year, which is why we now get to the situation here. And Andrea Stella doesn't necessarily think McLaren have got the fastest car, they're just using it better, but the numbers tend to suggest they might have the fastest car.
Because just looking at that same comparison, Verstappen the P2 in FP2 last year, pretty much identical lap time to Norris, so at 11.3, and so he's 3/10 quicker than he was last year. So they have made progress, not like they've gone backwards. The competition, like we always kind of hoped for, but in a way expected, they've caught up now in this 3rd season of these new generation of F1 cars. We wanted this to happen, didn't quite happen quick enough, but they've got there, and I'm happy with that now.
Bernie Collins, come in.
Yes, so just down at McLaren Crofty, and we just watched 2 pit stops happen down here. Norris started his long run on the medium, Piastri started his long run on the soft, and then they've switched to the other tyre. Now that gives the team really good information on the track improvement, because they've run the tyres in the opposite order. So one when the track's not so good and one when the track is better, so they can remove track improvement from their data they're looking at tonight, and they can get a really good feel for tyre deg. They'll also get 2 starts at the end of the session, 1 on each tyre, so lots of information to be gained there. But just from our position here in the pit lane, both pit stops a little bit slow, so a lot of the debrief happening down here in the back of the garage, looking through that video on an iPad, trying to figure out why that stop was slow, what they can do the next time the car comes in, just to try and improve it and get it a little bit cleaner, because it was quite slow.
Charles Leclerc throws his Ferrari down the inside. And Sergio Perez's, I thought it was only a practice session. And for one moment, Perez was like, I'm going to take the inside line. Oh, no, I'm not, because there's a Ferrari right there.
If this is a sign of things to come, then yeah, that has completely whetted the appetite. Excellent. And we saw it from Alex Albon as well, didn't we, down the inside of one of the RBs. I think it was Ricardo. Yes, it was. So, well, they say this track's hard to overtake on, but even in a practice session, we've seen it.
I mean, you know me, I'm rarely satisfied. I just quite like the wind to change a slightly different direction, so it's a headwind down that main straight.
I know what you mean. Yeah, I feel it too.
The tailwind doesn't necessarily aid the DRS as much, but it's a long straight. And the DRS can be quite powerful here.
Virtual straight.
Sorry, virtual straight, I apologise. Yeah, straight with the bank. That one there. Leclerc crosses the line and he does a 1:16.2. Perez, who he overtook going into turn 1, did a 1:16.3. It is, go back to Sergio Perez, it is up to him now to provide Red Bull with performances they need. He's been given the vote of confidence by the team and he needs to go out and deliver. And I think he's on his longest run without a podium since he joined Red Bull at the moment. He hasn't. He's got one podium in the last 9 races.
Well, it's a sign that the car it's definitely not the dominant car it once was. Maybe it's not even the, dare I say, the best car on the grid anymore. Yeah. And it's Verstappen that's hauling it up to the front and winning races maybe that he shouldn't necessarily should have won or been able to win. But such is the slick operation there as a team at Red Bull, as I think in an interview James Vowles was doing earlier on. They are the benchmark. They're the current world champions, multiple world champions, and Max Verstappen as well, driving absolutely superbly well, as you'd expect. And he comes here on home soil, and I'm sure he takes that energy and will maybe propel him to another victory that perhaps, again, we would all say from the outside, shouldn't have won. Who knows? But certainly it's not the dominant car it once was, and that's reflected in Sergio Perez's results.
I couldn't quite remember. It's one podium in the last 10 races. China, 10 races ago, that Sergio had his last podium. And look, the 1-2 finishes that Red Bull were putting in at the start of the season, we're all thinking this could have been won at a canter. It has dramatically changed. And we've all come back, and I hope you guys have too, wherever you're watching in the world. We've come back really energised for a Formula 1 season with 10 races to go. But whilst Max Verstappen might have a very healthy lead in the Drivers' Championship, it's still anything to play for at each and every race. Kevin Magnussen getting very tight to the inside of the chicane there. Is the one Haas remaining in this after Hulkenberg's brake issue caused him to head into the barriers at turn 1. Here we go, Alex Albon. He's picking up slipstreams and toes, and he's got the DRS as well. He's going wheel to wheel with Magnussen, and into turn 1 is ahead of the Haas.
And so he's discarded Ricardo in the RB, and now Magnussen in the Haas. This is great stuff from Albon. He's making brilliant progress in this practice session.
Slicing his way through the field. If there were points awarded for practice today, Alex Albon would be doubling his score, I'm sure. Carlos Sainz, the other driver, who has missed out on a huge chunk of this session. Gearbox issue for him, as it was stuck in 7th gear.
It's always interesting when you're a driver and you've caught another car and you can't get past them in the practice session, or you've been overtaken, as Magnussen was just then, and you always analyse what the car in front of you is doing, where it's potentially better, where your car is slightly faster, and that's all relayed in the debrief as well after the session. You know, you often hear drivers reporting about power differences or braking ability of the car that they were following in front, or how it performed in turning and traction, high-speed corners. It's all written down by the engineers, and usually it's an area where you'll find an area or two where to work on for future progress from your team. It's always fascinating when you follow another car.
George Russell got 14 laps in on that set of soft compound tyres, and Piastri got 12 laps in when he was running the soft on his race strategy. 10 laps currently from Max Verstappen on the soft. Kevin Magnussen is on lap 15 on the soft tyre, while we watch Sergio Perez, and Perez currently on his 11th lap on those medium tyres. Esteban Ocon 15 laps. Valtteri Bottas 11 laps on their soft tyres. Alonso got 11 laps on his softs as well. And there's the checkered flag as the Aston Martin of Lance Stroll crosses the line just as the flag comes out. And Carlos Sainz as well missed out through no fault of his own on a lot of very, very important running there. Hasn't run the soft tyre yet this weekend. George Russell, who said he's got his crash helmet from Spa. He's going to put that next to his crash helmets from the 2 wins in Formula 1 that did count after the provisional classification. And he's going to treat it like it was still a win, but it won't count for the record books.
I treat
as a win.
I treat it for him personally as a win.
A moral win for him, maybe.
It was. It's just a bit tight, a bit desperate for a practice session down into turn 11. But
beautifully executed move there. Gasly gave him enough space, and Oscar Piastri got some good practice in how to overtake into the chicane.
Yeah, yeah, it's good that they gave each other room.
Yeah.
And but yeah, it's very tight round here. We know it's a tight pit lane as well. 2 teams are under investigation. They're going to be talking that one through with these
Question
stewards.
for you: if you're going to treat George Russell's as a win for him, you know, and his confidence and his thoughts after Spa, would he have won had he not have been 1.5 kilos at least lighter than he should have been?
I think he would have done still, because it's not like he started the race underweight. Something happened to that car through the race. We don't know when it happened.
Okay.
It might have happened on the last lap. Maybe a bit fell off the car. Who knows? But it's something that he certainly didn't start the race underweight. Forgetting about the fuel.
I don't think a bit fell off the car. There were no mitigating circumstances.
Exactly. So, and he didn't suddenly lose 2 kilos before the start of the race. That happened during the race. And so even if you said 1.5 kilos for the entire race, which it wasn't, that's still 4 seconds, your total race time.
Right.
And he was basically just fending up. The gap had gone. It had been eroded to nothing for the last 3 or 4 laps. So he showcased he was able to... He made the one-stop work. And I think every driver out there knows that, yeah, it's 1.5 kilos. Let's even say 5 kilos. But it wasn't like it started at the beginning of the race. That happened. It progressively happened during the race. I still think he would have won, basically.
Robbed us of what would have been the closest top 3 finish for 8 years.
But in terms of just pure driving, what he did that day, he read the conditions perfectly well. He was the one that took the gamble on a one-stopper, forced it in a way. He said to the team, I reckon I can make this work. And he made it work. And that was tyre mastery, not from his side, not just the fact that the car was at some point underweight during the race that made the tyres last.
So George got disqualified in Spa. What did the top 10 all have in common? The top 10 finishers in Spa all had something in common, other than the fact they're Formula 1 drivers and they were racing in the Belgian Grand Prix.
Oh, I don't know. You've stumped me.
It's a brilliant trivia bit, this.
Go on, then.
It's the first time in F1 history that the top 10 finishers were all previous race winners.
I would have thought that had happened before. Wow.
No,
okay, good. Nice stat.
No. That was the first time since, I think, 1983 that we had, like, 13 previous race winners on the grid.
Well done to whoever gave Crofty that stat.
Yeah. Cheers, Sean. It's not where you're going from, it's how you use it, Crofty. He supplied me with that and said, Crofty, you'll love this. Get it into a practice session and won't have a clue.
Is that what he said?
Yeah, he did.
Right. I'll have to get a stat from him then and stump you next time.
That won't be hard, trust me. Right, from what happened in Spa to what happened here. Lewis Hamilton. So he's behind George Russell there. There's a lot of cars all trying to have the same position on track. And yeah, they did touch Lando Norris and Lewis Hamilton as Lando weaved his way in between the Mercedes.
Wow, so that was on their outlap before pushing on the soft tyres. So a bit more than just a jostling of positions. Actual contact was made.
Well, you want to get some track position, don't you? Find some space. There's plenty of space here around the track, nestled in the sand dunes as we are. We're off to the beach now, put our feet up and digest what's happened today. And for George Russell, he's bounced back after the disappointment of disqualification in Belgium to head up the times in second practice by 6/100ths of a second from Oscar Piastri and 1/10 of a second from Lewis Hamilton. Now, those three came out about 7 minutes later for their qualifying simulations. Lando Norris was out at the same time as Max Verstappen, and they were separated by 25 thousandths of a second. Alonso, Tsunoda, Magnussen, Leclerc and Albon completing the top 10. Sergio Perez finds himself outside of that top 10 then. And for Carlos Sainz and Nico Hülkenberg, no running whatsoever on the soft tyre. Accident at turn 1 for Hülkenberg, gearbox issue for Carlos Sainz. It stayed dry for second practice, and we had some decent action out there as well. And it's George Russell who ends the day as the fastest man on track.